Want to know what the best decks are in the BT14 format? Well, that is exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So to start off with the most hyped deck of the format, there certainly is Loogamon to talk about. It is a mainly set up OTK based type of deck where it really tries to draw and trash cards just like what most purple decks do. It does require you to set up specific pieces such as having dark animal traits and SOC trait cards in the trash so that you can play them back through different methods. With cards like Dracmon, Miss Memory Boost, and Analog Youth, these are the most important cards that you want to be seeing and playing as much as possible in the early stages of the game. Other than just Memory Boost, you also want to be setting up training cards at the same time because they give you value as you build up towards your stack. The game plan is overall very straightforward because it has that simple, explosive one-turn combo. Once everything is in place, you can come out from raising with just Loogamon. Place AG underneath to get the maximum value of effects, and Fenrir Loogamon can play a ton of stuff back from the trash as long as you have AG underneath as well. Fenrir Loogamon has one of the most unique game-bending effects because it prevents your turn from actually ending even though if the memory gauge passes over to your opponent's side, as long as it's not 3 or more. This gives you access to additional memory when you otherwise wouldn't normally have so that you can make your plays and then continue with your one-shot OTK combos. It can unsuspend multiple times, delete opponent's Digimon, and deal multiple damage relatively high DP thanks to the alliance mechanic which is provided from AG. The deck greatly focuses on being offense heavy, and it doesn't have much defense for itself other than having blocker with AG if you ever do so. Sometimes you might find yourself in a situation where you're not able to set up optimally, and then not seeing specific cards in trash can also slow down the deck, and because of that, sometimes you get outpaced by other matchups. Floodgate Rookies is also another huge weakness for this deck, and it counters it very heavily because there's not much built-in removal as you're building your stack. And this is where Loogamon comes in and plays a huge role during the mid-game strategy, because the deck can help you draw and trash cards to help you cycle more, but also helps you remove one particular Digimon that you want to get rid of on your opponent's side of the board. As of right now, we know that we're going to be receiving even more support in BT15 and BT16 for this particular archetype. And this makes me feel confident about the future of the deck and its relevancy, which is why I highly recommend you guys picking it up while you get the chance as well. Now, if you want to see deck lists like these before anyone else, be sure to join the AVAULT Club right now. Not only there are lists from my videos that you can see right here, you'll also get to see even more decks that I have been cooking and building which you normally don't get to see from my regular videos as well. Also, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more discussion videos like these while you're at it, and I really appreciate the support. So within the community, we've been talking a lot about dog decks, and dog decks are becoming more and more popular recently. We also got the MirageGaogamon deck to talk about. Thanks to BT14, there's a couple of new cards, which makes this deck actually very powerful and much stronger than it used to be. The new Bookamon egg gives it jamming without needing to have to play Nikolai anymore. Having built-in jamming in the deck is now really good because you're no longer required to play other cards, so you can focus more on consistency instead. Gomamon is also a fantastic rookie because it can selectively take out sources and can float back during the opponent's turn even when the stack gets deleted or when it's in threat. Zudomon Ace, being one of the best ace cards from the BT14 set, can selectively strip off sources from your opponent's Digimon and bounce them back for mid-game control. Having access to mental training also speeds up the consistency when it comes to searching. It's actually kind of surprising how well this deck is currently doing because MirageGaogamon was restricted down to 1 from the EX4 set. But the surprising thing is that it actually made a huge appearance within the top 16 ranking of the EU Nationals and winning it as well. What most players end up doing was that they just filled in the slots with the BT11 MirageGaogamon instead, and I find it a little bit surprising because I thought AVAULT would have been the better pick simply because of its security +1 inheritable could actually help you close and finish games way faster than the deck normally would. Now, we all gotta admit that the BT11 MirageGaogamon has one of the best effects in the game. The deck also has a ton of built-in bouncing effects throughout as you're digivolving through your stack or going through your combos when attacking all together, and by putting cards back to your opponent's hand, you get to gain a ton of memory which gives you a lot of resources and advantages at all times. And with this effect being able to activate even during your opponent's turn, it really disrupts their game plan, especially when they're trying to search and draw for pieces, which is one of the most important things that you have to do to proceed your game state and access your win condition. And then to top it all off, there's also MirageGaogamon Burst Mode, which can actually burst Digivolve for 0 by returning a Thomas back to your hand, and it also bounces anything when digivolving, gaining you additional memory, but most importantly, it's its when attacking effect because it bottom decks your opponent's hand and limits their hand size down to 8, and by bottom decking their hand, often enough you can take away really crucial important pieces that they actually needed in order to counterplay against you as well. This deck can win games relatively quickly, especially if the opponent has no answer to your stack because it can make multiple attacks in one single turn, which is its main win condition. Next, we also have another burst mode user with ShineGreymon. Being one of the best decks in the last BT14 format, this deck is still doing very well. It is also a deck that was hit by the restriction list with BT13 WarGreymon being limited to 1. Similar to MirageGao, it's actually not enough to stop the Marcus from punching the opponents down and win games. That is because the deck can still play Marcuses for free thanks to WarGreymons. The deck hasn't changed much as the red base seems to be more popular at the moment compared to the yellow version because the BT14 Koromon egg seems to be well more suited for the deck, and that is so you don't have to make risky attacks with your own Greymon stack anymore, especially when Marcus is actually doing most of the work. One of the biggest things about this deck and the archetype is that it can utilize both offense and physical training cards to give it good access all around when it comes to searching, and that is because pretty much all the cards in the deck are both yellow and red at the same time. Being able to reduce the Digivolution cost simply speeds up the pace of the deck even further than before as you're climbing through your stack, especially when you play alongside with the BT12 Marcus. Then there still is the BT12 ShineGreymon because it continues to provide a ton of aggression by letting your Marcus gain security +1, which is one of the major contributing factors to how it can win games fast. The archetype also has built-in removal with DP reduction as you combo and climb through your Digivolution stack while suspending your Marcuses at the same time, whether for effects or attacks. I talked about how good DP reduction is in one of my videos discussing the best forms of removal from before, and that continues to apply even for the most current metagame and today as well. The deck still has the capability of finishing games in an instant with the ShineGreymon burst mode combos, which basically hasn't changed at all, being one of the most reliable ways to win. The D-Brigade archetype received a ton of new support in BT14 in the form of DigiPolice traits as well. It can build super wide boards and make many attacks as its main win condition. Also, it has strong defense by having blockers and protection for your big stack all at the same time. It actually contains one of the best protection effects currently in the game because it prevents your stack from leaving play via most removal effects and by battle simply by deleting one of your other Digimon that has D-Brigade in its traits instead. And even so, the deck can still float very well as Commandromons keep playing each other back constantly whenever they're deleted. I feel that this deck is very consistent and always has a very solid game plan because it rarely bricks due to the nature of the build containing lots of rookies and lots of low cost cards that you can always play in your starting hand. It is very good at cycling and setting up plays ahead of time even for the next turn or two as long as you sequence your effects optimally. Satsuki's Mind Link effect is great because it gives the inheritable of aggression for jamming and reboot for defense. D-Brigade used to be an archetype that is actually very easy to learn and I would always recommend it to pick up for new players, but the complexity actually has increased over time, making it a little bit more tricky than it used to be because it now requires thorough planning in order to yield the maximum results, which can be very rewarding. Because there are so many effects that cycle through the top of your deck by playing things constantly, there are times that you can actually deck yourself out, especially when facing against heavy control type of decks. And that is why it is really important to be mindful and keep track of your resources as you're playing this deck because you don't want to forget that your overall goal is to outpace your opponents quickly by chipping their securities to win. Moving on, we have another really popular deck which came out from the BT14 set, and that is Yellow Vaccine, or also known as Vaccine Angels. The new yellow support mainly introduces the entire Patamon and Seraphimon line. The deck can turbo Digivolve very quickly thanks to Patamon's start of main effect, but that's not all because there's also Emissary of Hope and physical training that you can utilize to really help turbo Digivolve. With Patamon being your main level 3 rookie now, it opens up to many level 4 choices with anything being vaccine related, and it makes it somewhat toolbox-like. Examples be like GeoGreymon, which play Tamers for free, you can do Bulkmon to deal early damage with aggressive plays, Angelomon for removal, and also Rapidmon to deal with wider boards and remove smaller things too. Recover and cycling through your security very quickly gives it access to the additional resources where most decks don't have, and this is one of the biggest advantages for most yellow decks because it's almost like playing with a second hand. Magna Angemon Ace gives a lot of value by recovering security and can surprise DP reduce the opponent's Digimon when you blast Digivolve during the opponent's turn. The main boss Digimon is Seraphimon, which can reduce the DP of the opponent's Digimon as its main removal and beat down the opponent's security with its extra check as well. Venusmon is used to slow down the pace of the game against aggressive decks when you're not keeping up as well, and it also sometimes buys you an entire extra turn with its blanket effect of security -1 across the opponent's entire board. Having access to both Cutemon and Pillowmon, which are the strongest floodgate rookies currently in the format, to stop your opponents from reducing Digivolution costs and playing via effects is a very good counter against many matchups. The only issue with this deck is that because it has a much slower game pace and progress to its win condition slowly, and because of that, it sometimes does cause you go into overtime, resulting in a not so ideal situation, especially when you're playing in a larger scale tournament. But one of the best things with this new Patamon engine is that not only is it very good for itself, it also brings back many other popular decks such as Masamon, Kazuchimon, and Kintorosmon too. I feel like the main cards and the core engine of this deck can have a lot of good value and longevity because there's going to be many other yellow base decks in the future that can utilize the support from this as well. We also got another deck that's very similar, which is Security Control, but this is not new because it's actually making a little bit of a resurgence recently. Some of us know that this deck has always been around the meta ever since the beginning of the game, but recently it made a little bit more of a comeback in the competitive scene. The deck adopted the yellow and purple base for quite some time, and that is because it has access to some of the best removal cards such as Chaos Degradation, Long K, and they both take out pretty much any Digimon from the game. Flame Hellscythe is also used there to play things back from trash and minus your opponent's Digimon's DP. And then its main focus is to heal security even more than Yellow Vaccine, where you'll see cards such as Holy Wave, Tactical Retreat, and both the new and old Magna Angemons to recover non-stop. The goal is to recover a ton of security to load it up with a ton of bombs, which can remove and deal with the opponent's Digimon board whenever they swing into it. This is relatively a really good pick in the current format because it has very good matchup against most other top decks which we currently talked about, such as Loogamon, MirageGaogamon, and ShineGreymon, since these decks actually lack protection. Its win condition is to slowly chip away the opponent's security while you deplete their resources at the same time. As its alternative win condition, it can actually deck your opponents out until they have no more cards left in their deck. Sometimes it does require a little bit of luck because it really depends on what is set up in your security if you're able to sort of interact with the opponent's board and get rid of their things. It does require you to play one card at a time, and every card you play every turn is actually very important. Therefore, your matchup knowledge and knowing exactly what the opponent's deck does becomes very crucial when you're playing this deck. Now, of course, one of its biggest weaknesses is that it can run into overtime very often because of its very slow nature, and it can result in a lot of draws before you even are able to finish your matches. But despite that, we have seen a couple of these security control decks top in the most recent EU Nationals format because of how strong it really is. I feel that this is one of the decks and strategies that can always find itself back into the meta because it will always continue to receive indirect support in the form of security related effects. WarGreymon is always one of the archetypes that I'll always mention in my top list videos, and that is mainly because it continues to receive large amounts of support ongoing. BT14 did bring in a couple of new cards with a brand new Agumon that basically is strictly better than the older promo one, and there's also the secret rare WarGreymon, which can actually do a ton, which is really good in specific situations with the correct amount of setup. The main idea of WarGreymon is still the same. You're trying to build a big stack and then take out all your opponent's security by stacking multiple security +1 effects, so then you can blitz Omni for game afterwards. It is exceptionally good because it has built-in removal in the form of Raid to swing over any of your opponent's unsuspended Digimon, and it has massive DP, but not to mention, it can pierce for damage all at the same time. Having protection is always fantastic against any deleting, returning to hand, and bottom decking effects, which makes it very, very indestructible. One of the best things with building Greymon decks is that you don't necessarily always have to focus on building a big stack and having an OTK focused strategy, because it can also adapt towards more of a control based style based on your own personal preference and build. You can always splash in and interchange with its dark counterpart, which is Black WarGreymon, for an even heavier control style too. And it is no surprise that we can continue to believe that this deck will always be relevant since it is based off the main protagonist after all, and we can always expect to continue receiving additional support in the future too. So if you haven't done so yet, be sure to check out the AVAULT store right now to grab yourself some awesome merch. If you want to learn more about each deck that I covered in today's video, watch these video guides to learn and how to play them as well. As always, thank you so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you in the next video, and this is AVAULT, signing